Buenos días, clase. Today we're going to be looking at indirect object pronouns in Spanish, why we use them, how we use them. We're going to kind of take it back a step and look just in general at pronouns. What's the function of a pronoun? Why do we use pronouns? Number one rule, we use pronouns. We use pronouns because we want to replace the noun. Instead of saying the noun, we're going to say the pronoun. Sometimes it's because it's too long. Sometimes it's because we're too lazy. Sometimes it's because we said it a whole bunch of times already and everybody knows what we're talking about. Sometimes we use it to avoid repetition. Maybe Jenny doesn't always want to say Jenny when Jenny talks about Jenny. Maybe sometimes Jenny doesn't like hearing Jenny's name every time Jenny says Jenny. So we use a pronoun instead. Words like I, you, she, me. And then sometimes we just, especially when we're speaking, we just want to be quicker. We don't want to say it the long way. We're going to go in a short way. So looking at pronouns, we have 4 different types that you actually already know. You've actually even used indirect object pronouns, which are the ones that we're going to be practicing today. But let's just kind of start with all of our pronouns. Now, our subject pronouns we use for the person who's doing the action, right? So here's my super grammar speak, the doer of the action. Reflexive pronouns we used when the doer is also the recipient. When they're the same person. We used our direct object pronouns for the person who is person, or the object usually, who is the recipient of the action or the verb. And then we're going to use our indirect object pronouns also for a recipient, but it's kind of the person that ends up receiving it. Oh, that didn't sound very good, did it? It's complicated. We're going to get there later. So we're going to go with the recipient here also. And we'll look at the difference between recipient direct and recipient indirect momentarily. So you should know all these pronouns already. If I were you, I would pause this, fill in all of these on your notes, and then press play and I'll show you the answers. So here we go. Voila. All of our pronouns. You've seen them all before. So subject pronouns, we have yo, nosotras, or nosotros. For when you're talking to people, only in the singular, we distinguish between informal and formal. We have tú versus usted. Here in Latin America, the plural of tú is ustedes, and the plural of usted is ustedes. So with this plural level, when you're talking to a group of people here in this part of the world, we don't use vosotros. We do not distinguish between formal and informal in the plural. When you're talking about one person, so masculine, él, feminine, ella. Ella, something new we're starting to see come out of social media, come out of the world as the world changes. More and more people are looking for a gender neutral pronoun, and this is the closest we've got. It's not perfect yet. We're still working. For example, we don't have versions of it yet that the world's figured out how to use it, but I'm putting it here just in case it's something that you're interested in. It's something that our class has been looking at this year. And then we have the plural of those, ellos, ellas, and ellas. Okay, now if this same person, yo, is also the recipient, so if I am brushing my own hair, if I'm the brusher and the brushee, then I'm going to use me instead of yo. Same thing, nosotros or nosotras, it's going to turn into nos, tú is going to turn into te, and everybody else, usted, ustedes, ellos, ellas, ellas even, it's all going to be se. All right. Direct object pronouns, these are the objects directly receiving the action. If you say what, this is the answer, or whom. She loves me, so that would be me. So if I'm the recipient of the love versus the lover, I guess, then it's going to be me versus yo. Nos, te, lo or la for usted, depending on gender. Los and las for the plural of that. Lo, la, los, and las. So we have me, te, nos, los, las. And then these are guys we're working over here, and you've seen them before. You worked with them with gustar. It's something that you were using indirect object pronouns and you didn't even know it. So we have me, te, for tú, ustedes, le, as is él and ella. Nosotros is nos, then ustedes les, and ellos, ellas, les. So looking at this, you've probably seen me, nos, te. So those are all the same. Yay. Where they're not the same is the third person. Down here when we're talking about people, we have se or lo or le. And then the same thing we're also going to see with usted for the formal, which is always going to mimic this in our verbs and in our pronouns. These are going to mimic one another. Okay, as promised, we're just going to go one step back again and look at those three. Subject is the doer of the action being the verb. Reflexives we talked about before, I think a lot this year. I think you're good on that. But we're really going to be kind of dialing in today the difference between the direct object. The direct object directly receives the action of that verb. And then the indirect object receives the result of the action. So it ends up being a little bit more indirect. Ahora, the key. I don't have to deciding direct versus indirect is this. In both cases, we're going to take the verb, so that action, and we're going to ask a question using it. So if you ask verb what or whom, almost always what, that's going to give you the direct object. Okay? And if you ask verb and then you say a to or a for in front of that same what or whom, that's going to give you your indirect object. Okay, so let's look at an example. What am I talking about? So if I have this sentence, I'm going to do it in English so it's a little bit easier. I wrote them letters. Okay, so wrote is our action. So we're going to say wrote what? And that's going to be the letters is the answer of this question. So the letters is going to be my direct object. But in order to get the them answer out of my question, I would say wrote to whom. Now, the what versus the whom isn't as big of an issue as you would think because you kind of know more or less what. I mean, when you're talking about a person, you're going to use whom. When you're asking about objects, you're going to say what. Okay, but the point is, you need the to works in this question. So to whom is going to get me them. So that means that them is my indirect object pronoun. My indirect object, which I could turn into a pronoun. Okay, looking at that same sentence again, I want to point out something. In English, we're kind of a little bit wacky. In English, we can switch our order, direct versus indirect. So sometimes we say, I wrote them letters, or I wrote letters to them. In English, you only have to add the to if you put the indirect after the direct. If you put the indirect before the direct in English, you don't have to say that to them. So make sure you ask yourself the question in your head, does it make sense to say to them or just them? And if it does make sense to say to them, then you're going to know that that's the indirect object. So we said that letters was our direct, and them is our indirect. So when we replace those in Spanish, we're going to need to choose correct pronouns for those. So it would be something like this. Yo, oh, I don't have a pen. Yo, and then wrote is escribí. Okay. Letters, I can leave like this. I can leave las cartas, or I can turn it into a pronoun. But I'm going to leave it for now. Okay, so them, when I replace it, I'm going to replace it with a pronoun. So the correct pronoun for these guys would be les. Oops, that's not a pen. So I'm going to put it here. We're going to talk in a minute about where to put them, but that's basically how I'm deciding. So deciding on this next one, I helped her. We need to, we know is our subject. That's the doer, the helper. And then her. So here we have to decide, does it make sense? Would you say I helped to her or I helped for her? No. So her is going to be direct. Okay, so we would replace her with a la. And then on this one, I used to collect coins. So collect is my action. So I'll say collect what to get the direct object. So again, we have another example of a direct object. So coins is our direct object. So if we were going to replace it, we would, las monedas, we would replace with las. All right. So if we were going to take that la and las and put it in a sentence form, here's our direct object rule. You have to replace the noun, okay? So you can use either, on this one, for example, you can use either las monedas or las when you're making the sentence, but not both, okay? If you do decide you're going to replace it, this las is going to come before your verb. A simple verb just means a one-word verb, like used to collect in Spanish is just a simple verb. And then optional, you can use the noun form, las monedas, or you can use the pronoun form. So here are our options with this sentence. You can say, yo coleccionaba las monedas, okay? Or you can take the las monedas, turn it into a pronoun instead of a noun, and put it right here. Yo las coleccionaba. On this one, we only have one option because hers can only be said one way here in Spanish. So this one would be, yo, and then you're going to do the la out in front, and then ayudé. I helped her. Has to come in front here. We don't have an option. This is the only way you can say this now. Okay, and here we're finally at where we were supposed to be here today. Okay, so indirect object pronoun, where do we put them? We're going to put them before your verb, before a simple verb. Not just a simple verb, just means a verb that has one word. It's not a verb that has a participle at the end or infinitive at the end with two parts. It's just one word verb. Okay, this is important to note. We have to use them. Whereas in our direct object pronoun, remember we had the choice of either using las monedas or las. In Spanish, which is different from English also, if the indirect object exists contextually, you have to use it in pronoun form. You can add on in noun form, and we're going to talk about that. It's called a clarifier, but you have to use the pronoun form. Okay, so our sentence was, I gave coins to Julia, okay? We turned her into Julia. So coins is las monedas, and we know how to say Julia. Okay, so looking at our question then, I'm going to say gave what, and that is going to get me las monedas, so that means they're direct, and I'm going to replace them with las if I want to, or I can just leave them this way. Since we're not practicing our direct object pronouns so much and we don't want to do doubles, we're just going to know that that's your direct object right there, and we'll leave it there. Okay, and then gave to whom? To whom is going to be Julia. So that means Julia is my indirect object. We're talking about her, and she's just one female. So if I were going to use a pronoun for her, I would check le. Okay. So this is what my sentence has to look like. It would look like this. Yo. Okay, and then gave is the. And then I'm going to take Julia's pronoun. I'm going to put right here because I need to put the pronoun before my simple verb. My verb is here, the. So yo le di. And then I'm going to leave las monedas in noun form. Las monedas. Because I have the option with my direct objects to... Oh, sorry, I'm talking and writing at the same time. I have the option with my direct objects to leave them in noun or pronoun form. So I'm going to leave it in noun form so it's not complicated. So, yo le di las monedas. Let's look at one where I'm not the subject. Okay, so this time our doer is she, right? She's the seller. And what does she sell? She sells bread. So bread is my direct object. And she sells to whom? She sells to me. So I am the indirect object. Me is the same in Spanish and English. Okay, so when we do this in Spanish, we have ella is going to be our subject pronoun. To sell, she sells is ella vende. She sells to me is going to come out to the front. Ella me vende el pan. Okay, let's look at where to put those indirect object pronouns, or all of our pronouns, but we're just talking about indirect object ones today. And today we're in this part, we looked at simple verbs, so those had to go before, and simple verbs, remember, were verbs with one word. Right now we're going to be looking at complex verbs, which are verbs that have 2 or more words in them. So here we have 2 examples of those complex verbs. Quiero dar, which is a complex verb because it has 2 parts. Quiero, all by itself, would just be simple. So like I want money would be a simple verb and it'd have to come before. But we're saying I want to give, right? So 2 parts. Our other example here is va a vender, going to sell. So for these, we have 2 complex verbs. Both of these end with infinitives. Okay, so if you want to say, I want to give you money, give what? Give money, el dinero. So that would be our direct. And give to whom? Give to you. So that's our indirect. Down here below, va vender, she's going to send me fruit, sell me fruit. So sell what? Fruit, direct. Sell to whom? To me, indirect. Okay, so let's look at where to place. So with our infinitives, pronouns are going to be placed. Place pronouns. You have 2 options. Option 1 is before the helping verb. Okay, so before the whole thing, not in the middle, but before everything. So we know that you is going to be te. Okay, so we could say te quiero dar el dinero. Okay, and then down here with she's going to sell me fruit. We have me va a vender la fruta. Okay, so on both of these, va, ir is our helping verb here. So we put the me right before it. Quiero is the helping verb on this one. So we put the indirect object pronoun te right before it. Your second option is to place your pronoun at the end attached to your infinitive. Okay, and that would look like this. Quiero darte el dinero. Or va a venderme la fruta. Okay. So for these guys, we have one long verb, all attached. One verb just got a little bit longer. And when we put them before, it's a solo. It's not attached to anything. All right. Our other real big category of verbs that are complex that we've seen so far are verbs that end, the second verb ends in ando or yendo. This is the progressive tense. So we have, usually our helping verb is estar, but not always. Sometimes it's seguir. So we have estoy dando, I am giving you the pizza. And then down here, sigue, he continues escribiendo. Okay, so this is our present progressive tense. So we'll go in and identify our bits a little bit more. Giving what? Giving the pizza. And to whom am I giving the pizza? To you. So you're the indirect. Writing what? Writing the letter, la carta. And writing to whom? Writing to her. Okay. So we have a te on the first one and a le that we need to figure out where to place. These have those same two options. Before the helping verb or after everything. So back up, same as our thing here, except instead of at the end of the infinitive, it's going to be at the end of the ando or yendo. Those are called the present participles. Okay. So let's look at that both ways. So we have te estoy dando la pizza. I know you're all dying to know if I wanted to do pizza too. It would say, if you wanted to do pizza too, it would be te la estoy dando. But let's save that for another lesson. And then the other way of saying it would be estoy oops, that doesn't look like an A. Dándote. Let's make sure it's all looking like one word. Dando, still one word, changing the color. Te la pizza. Forgot to make that blue. Okay, now, dándote. This is one word and it's longer. If we go with our rules from previously, remember that words that end in vowels, ends, and s's, the stress should be on the second to last. So we're going to look at dando before we put the te on. And we had 1, 2, dando. So your stress should be here. It was there, and that's why we did not need an accent on this. But once we added on a syllable with the te, the word is longer, and that da that has our stress now is not on the second to last where it's supposed to be. It's on the third to last. So if we count off syllables, we have 1, 2, 3, ends in an E. The stress should be on 2, but it isn't. It's way back on ando, so we need to add an accent when we do that. Estoy dándote la pizza. Okay? Our other version down here, sigue escribiendo. We have, her is going to be a le. So we have le, sigue escribiendo la carta. And this is the way to go if you don't want to worry about where that pronoun upsets the balance of your vowels to accents because it doesn't have an accent there. Or you can do it this way. Sigue escribiendo la carta. Okay, so again, looking at our word, we had 1, 2, escribiendo. Our stress was there because it was supposed to be there, didn't have an accent. But now, once we added on the le, we have to renumber because we have one syllable longer on our words. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 syllables. It ends in which is a vowel. So our stress should be on the second to last syllable. should be here, but it's not. We know it's right here where it was before. So we're going to put an accent. We're going to accent the eh, not the e. Okay, so 2 options. When we have these guys, when you put your indirect object pronoun before your helping verb, you don't need to worry about upsetting the balance. When you decide instead to add it on the end of your present participle, the ando or the endo, you have to add an accent, okay? And you understand why now, but I'm also going to tell you, you have to always add it on the letter right before the ene, okay? So if you decide to use our rules from up above here, these at the end of, and add it on, you need to add an accent on the letter that comes right before the N. Okay, so that's the A or the E. And lastly, emphasizers and clarifiers. So again, we have our indirect object pronouns, right? So me, te, le, nos, and las. Now, these could be anything. If I make a sentence and I say, les doy todo mi dinero. You don't know who les is. It could be ustedes, right? I could be saying, I give all my money to you guys. Or I could be saying, I give the money to Juan and to Elena. Or I could be saying, I give them to all of the ladies in the world. You can't tell. It's super vague. It's a pronoun, right? We replace the actual name with it. So if you want to ever clarify who you're talking about or emphasize who you're talking about, if I say me something, you know it's me. So in that case, it's an emphasizer. You need to add an emphasizer or clarifier. So for all of these, our emphasizer and our clarifier is just a repeat of the person who you replaced with your indirect object pronoun. Your emphasizer or clarifier is always optional. It's never something you have to do. It's just something you choose to do as someone who wants to have clear writing. And the important thing, the emphasizer clarifier always starts with an a, okay? So if the emphasizer or the clarifier for me would be a, me, this one has an accent. For tu, it's a, ti, no accent. And then for everybody else, your emphasizer or clarifier is a plus the same subject pronoun that we had before. So we have a, usted, a, él, a, ella, a, ella even. For nosotros, it would be a nosotros or a nosotras. For ustedes, a ustedes. And for ellos and ellas, it'd be a ellos, a ellas, a ellas. Okay? So here, everybody is exactly the same except for a me and a ti. Those two are irregulars. So let's highlight those. Everybody else is just subject pronoun. Me with an accent because me without an accent means my. T, no need for an accent because there's no other word that means that. Also, you could use someone's name with an a in front of it instead of someone's pronoun because, I mean, if you're going to bother to clarify, why not really be direct? So you would also say a name. So it would be like a Juan, for example. If you have 2 people together over here, you would say a Juan y a again, Elena. So you're going to say the a 2 times. Okay, your emphasizer and clarifier is going to come right here. So it would look something like this. A ustedes les doy todo mi dinero. Okay, so notice I did ustedes, the clarifier in green. That's because les is your indirect object pronoun, but ustedes is your indirect object. Okay, so IOP, indirect object pronoun, and your indirect object. You're just saying it a second time in order to really clarify who that les is. We can do this if we choose to with indirect objects. We may never do that with direct objects. There you have it. That's it. You made it to the end. Go you.